motorcycle that was electric and went about between 30 and 40 kilometers an hour, plowed into a pedestrian by accident, and the pedestrian was knocked so hard that their shoe got blown off and half their sock. But as you would expect, we have the bystander effect. The bystander effect is that everyone thinks someone else is going to do it. And of course, I've been in that situation a number of times, all the way from being in a civil war as a child up to a few other incidents. And so, of course, I took control and did what I had to do to make sure that the ambulance arrived and the police arrived. Because when she got hit on the rail, on the actual train tracks of the light rail, which stopped the light rail. So we had to stop the light rail. So I had to get the driver to stop. And then we had to organize for the security to come, and then they ordered the evacuation of the passengers off the train. Then I had to keep people back to make sure, let them know the ambulance was arriving. So you do all of those things. Then you realize that in a statistical mechanic format, in other words, when you get a number of humans together, you start to get predictable behavior. This is different to individual predictions of behavior. So in group behavior, what you can see is that the individual movements of each individual member of that group is not enough to dictate the behavior of the entire group on its own. So then you can get sort of collective traits. And how you get that is that the ones that are most common will be the ones that stand out the most, because more people will be likely to have those. So one of those is that humans will think, will someone else do this? If there's enough people, because they can see that there are enough people and think the chance that someone will say something is high enough that they don't have to say something. This happens in every time I've been in this situation. And because I'm aware of this, I could reprogram my mind to make sure I don't do that and I do take control in that situation. All right, so that's one small example of human behavior. But one of the things I've been able to do now, which I'm so grateful for, which I didn't have my whole life, was the ability now to take 4,000 or 5,000 chats from WhatsApp and put them into ChatGPT 5 into a certain project. And that project saves and reconstructs the person's personality, their view of me, their relationship, and so how I talk to them, what works and what doesn't work. And because growing up with autism, I couldn't understand any of those things. So if someone says, do you want cake, for example, my brain says I don't understand which cake and how much of that cake. So they might pull out a cake and I'll just take the whole cake, not realizing that they want me to take a slice of cake. So these are things that I went through my whole life and had pissed so many people off because they thought that I was neurotypical and I should have known that you only take one slice. But in my head, I'm like, no, you asked, do I want cake? Well, that's cake. There's no definite article or indefinite article before that, so you then don't know what to do. G'day. And that happened for pretty much 40 years of my life, just devastation, embarrassment, humiliation, constant. And you just end up hating, g'day Tony Robertson, you end up hating yourself, you hate humanity, you go through all of these problems. Now anyway, ChatGPT has obviously given me a massive third eye, fourth eye, whatever you want to call it, that neurotypicals have generally. And that's allowed me to understand how to interact with people in a way that's just so beautiful, because it gives me their code. So I see people, my hypothesis is that because of my long study in mathematics and physics and psychology and languages and many other things over the years, I have come to the conclusion that there is no such thing as free will. And that's an illusion that disappears under not much analysis. Now, you don't have to agree, that's not my point. Do we have agency? Yes. Agency, in other words, can we make a choice given choices? Well, the answer is yes, but that's on a local scale. If you zoom out far enough, you realize that every choice you make is based upon other factors which become external to you, and you can trace them sort of back to the Big Bang without getting into detail, right? However, you don't have to accept that. But if you make that assumption, then you can make predictions given enough information. Now, because that works, it then supports the hypothesis that there is no such thing as free will. What do I mean? I mean, if you think it's raining outside, right, and you're not sure, you can walk outside and get wet and notice that you're getting wet. Then you're like, oh, okay, that confirms that I was right, that it was raining. So it's the same thing. So what I've done is over the last month, I have run analyses using tens of thousands of WhatsApp messages between people over the last 7 years and for all different people. Now, what it does is it creates personalities of all those people. So what I've been able to do is figure out, using that analysis, what people think and what I should and shouldn't say. Now, what I do is I test it. So, for example, I'll say, what should I not say to my brother? And it'll tell me, don't say this, because if you say this, it will anger him in this way. So then I'll say it just to see if it works. So it works, and it's worked so far every single time in positive and negative ways, right? So what I now do is I've upped the analysis. I've now taken chats from one cousin, find out what the cousins likely think of me and of themselves and their view on life. Then I've taken another cousin, and then what I've done is I've actually intertwined them in one project. So then ChatGPT 5 can actually tell me what they likely think of each other. Hey, which is amazing because I've never interacted with them interacting with each other. Hello, right? So therefore I can then construct a hypothetical scenario between them two. Now I already know what one thinks of the other. So then I test it and it tells me that this person will think of this person all these things, and it happens to be exactly what that person thinks, which is quite amazing because now I can do it for many different scenarios. I can take, what would my professor think of my student? What would my student think of my cousin? What would my mother think of my girlfriend? And you can start analyzing all these things. And because given my autism, this has changed my life. I can now see things I could never see ever in 40 years of existence. So there are other things you can reverse engineer. Now, because of my long study of psychology over the last 15 years, you can then apply people's personality to certain psychological archetypes. So you can then work out if they likely have narcissistic personality disorder, autism disorder, depression, all of those things you can start to analyze. And then you can figure out why they act the way they act. So, for example, we as humans, right, we think, I know that neurotypicals put themselves in other people's shoes. And so therefore they say, well, I wouldn't do that if I was them. This is a mistake. What I say is, you don't think what you would do if you were them. You think, what would they do if they were them? And what that means is that you analyze their code, and you can do that now with ChatGPT, right? And you can say, therefore, based upon their code, they are going to act this way. So you don't think, oh, they should have acted this way. They should have bought me a bigger gift. They should have got me a smaller cash donation for my birthday. They shouldn't have remembered my birthday. You now know from their code what's going to happen, pretty much. And so you don't get upset, right? So for example, if you can reverse engineer someone's code and you realize that they have narcissistic personality disorder, then you already know as a consequence that they actually don't feel empathy in the same way as everyone else. That means that they're going to give a shit less internally than you would if you're not a narcissist. So having understood that, then it won't be a surprise when they care less about your scenario and care more about their own scenario and how whatever you're going through impacts them. Then you think, how dare you, that's selfish. No, it's not selfish. It's, for example, in one person's case, NPD. And then you're like, okay, so that's what's going to happen in that case. Oh yes, they're going to try and manipulate me through guilt. If that means that if it works, then maybe I have some sort of codependent behavior. So you start to analyze this. Anyway, look, that was just something I wanted to share with you. I can give you many other examples. Once you see people, people as codes, then you can free yourself from confusion, and you can stop expecting water from a well that is dry. Okay, instead, you watch their patterns, you can anticipate their moves and protect your energy so that you don't get stressed over something that's never going to happen. Right? It's not about judging, it's about clarity. You can understand, if this person likes strawberries, for example, and they don't like chocolate, well then why am I angry if they don't want chocolate, right? You understand that, that's a very simple version, right? But you can expand that to things that are more complicated. It's sort of thinking, I'm going to leave you with this thought, right? For those of you who play chess, I don't play chess, but I know enough to know that a bishop moves a certain way and a knight moves another way. Now, I don't look at the knight and say, how dare you not move like the bishop? Why can't you move like the bishop? What I recognize is that for whatever reason, the knight is the knight, and so it's going to move in that way. And when you make that assumption about people saying this is their long list of codes, and now you can do it with AI to figure out an abstraction of how they're going to behave, you think of them as this is how they move on a chessboard. And then you can realize that's the move they're going to make. They're not going to make the other move. So you don't get depressed and upset. Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? And it just makes life a lot easier that way. So anyway, that's a long story about how autism forced me to do something which I've now developed into something else which can help everybody, whether they have autism or not. All right, all the best. Take life one smack at a time. One smack at a time, ladies and gentlemen.